Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Bloom, Group Publisher of Walls and Ceilings, and welcome to If Walls Could Talk. It's always an honor to have with me Steve Slepcevic, the CEO of Strategic Response Partners. Steve, thanks so much for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me, Jill.
Well, Steve, when it comes to storms, there's nobody better to reach out to than you, because you are the one that runs into the storm for sure, on so many different levels. But I wanted to take a minute and talk to you about what's going on the West Coast right now. There's this powerful storm that I don't know where I've been, but I haven't heard of this before. It's called a bomb cyclone. So first, let's start there. What is a bomb cyclone? How often do these happen? And what does everybody need to understand about what's coming our way?
Well, these systems are, cold systems that actually move into the Western region. They're happening more frequently than we've had in the past. But it's an atmospheric river. So what ends up happening is it brings a lot of rain and sometimes combined with wind as well. And that's actually creating some real serious issues because it's not just about trees coming down. But if you look at the Northern California area, these are high mountains, the high Sierras. So a lot of moisture dumping on these mountains, aside from snow, which is what you're really praying for. Not that that's not going to create its own issues, but if you have a tremendous amount of rain on the lower area, it's going to cause a lot of flooding, severe flooding, and what we call debris flows. Not much different than what you saw in Hurricane Helene. And one of the things that I found quite interesting is the salmon gates that they normally have down. All those gates are up for the season. So I'm always thinking about like the preparedness side of it. Well, you have a system coming in that's going to dump a ton of rain, ton of moisture at some really massive levels. And to be a precautionary type of system, I would think, hey, let's put those gates down, create those dams, prevent the flow that's potentially coming down, and protect some of these neighborhoods. But that's not the case. So I'm hoping and praying that these systems from Northern California, all the way up into Washington, including Vancouver Island, don't get those type of devastating effects that we saw in Hurricane Helene.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those salmon gates for a minute. Where are those, and how do they, if they keep them up, does that cause more problems right now?
It can cause more problems. It can cause a lot more flooding, but there's a system that they can create to limit and mitigate some of that stuff. And again, I'm not the person who's controlling those rivers, but that's something
Right.
you should be definitely looking at as to how they can do things to mitigate, and if need be, cut other lines for the additional to redirect some of that water flow, so that sometimes you can get in there with bulldozers and some earth movers and creating other lines to divert some of that water that's coming down, or at least in California, find ways to capture that water and retain that water. So when we do go into drought seasons, this stuff's not just going out to the oceans, but I don't think Governor Newsom's going to be doing anything good for our state anytime soon.
All right. Yes, because you do live in California. You know better than anybody else. Well, see, let's just talk about preparing. If for the contractors that are listening, what are the top 3 things they should all be doing to prepare?
Well, the top thing is that I feel that in the preparedness side of it, it always starts at home. It starts with me as an individual, right? So I'm going to only operate from as prepared as I am. So how prepared are you in your own personal life as an individual, right? What things are you doing first and foremost spiritually? Where are you at spiritually, right? Because we all operate from that sense of spirit being. If you're spiritually broken and you're a mess, you're not going to respond very well on whatever chaos is coming your way. The second thing is obviously your health and wellness, right? How you physically fit. I mean, you're not going to be responding if you're ailing, broken, mentally foggy, and those type of things, right? So spiritually, mentally, and physically, get your house in order as a person. The next part of it is, where's your family at? How's your family prepared? How well are you organized? What stuff do you have in your house, your like pantries? And this is not a conversation about, what food and water you need to have in your home. That if you don't have that stuff put together, then I don't know. I mean, that's the first steps. I can't help you on the rest of it. And then communications. I mean, if people see just generally your cell phone communications has been sporadic, it's been chaotic. Many times people have noticed how AT&T, even AT&T FirstNet, which we have on our phones, went down, right? And that's not just in Florida, but it went down in California and multiple states. Verizon went down for a short time. We saw some of the cyber stuff that's happened. comms going down more and more. But what I can tell you is, for my part of it, every one of my family members, every one of my team members, every one of my emergency response vendors are on a roster of satellite phones. And those sat phones are all in Faraday sleeves, which is just to protect them from any type of solar flare, any other external charge that could fry the phones. And I keep those things in Faraday sleeves, as you know. And the best place, again, I'm not promoting them, I don't get paid from them, is go to sat123.com. They're really kind of the best that I found in the industry. And this is going back 16 years of working with multiple companies. And again, some people like the Inmarsat. I'm a Iridium fan. I like the Iridium phones, right? And or get a Starlink. And we have mobile Starlinks we keep on our vehicles, and I have a Starlink on my house. Again, another form of communication, so that I can't communicate with the sat phone when I need to send emails and so on, right?
Right.
But because we're in the disaster zone, this would have been doing since '89. I'm in an area that has no comms. Or if I run my security operations, what we've done at the border and some of the remote areas, same thing. I got to be able to have a sat phone. And on top of that, one thing that we do that's a little further, and this is not something unless you have a large team and you're going into an area and you need to communicate with a bunch of project managers, and you know there's going to be no communication. It's difficult to do it from satellite phone to satellite phone, right? When you need to talk to a whole team. But you can get an Icon Sat radio, which is what my whole team carries, including my security team, because we're in those zones together.
Right.
Now, everybody's on a Sat radio communication. So when I key down, the whole team hears it, right? So I can move everybody. And we talk about this as a motto in our company. We always move as one heartbeat, one breath, because when we have to move into a certain area, it's a critical move, and things have to move really quickly. And one thing that I wanted to add on how important and critical that stuff was when we responded to Hurricane Helene. I took a team of paramedics out there and my helicopter pilot. We were the first ones to stand up the first airport at Hickory Regional. And we did that organically because I saw that the only way we were going to be able to get to these people that were cut off was people that would have to have a small area to land. You can't get fixed wing aircrafts. There's no airport there. You would only be able to get there with helicopters. And a lot of the rural fire departments, which we identified, have LZs on them where you can land a helicopter to do medical evacuation. So my team of paramedics, we pushed into that, not knowing, organically. It was all spirit led. But the first ones that we responded to were the people who had satellite phones and called and said, hey, here's my coordinates. Here's where I live. We need oxygen. We need insulin. My father's diabetic, right? We got to be able to, get dialysis for him. Otherwise, on day 5, he's going septic, right?
Yeah.
So, so-and-so tried to hike out. They broke an ankle. They sprained their ankle, or they broke their arm in trying to do a rescue. So those are the first initial rescues that were immediately responded to, was those with satellite phones, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So how critical was that? Man, it was critical to get satellite phones out to the rural fire department so they could communicate what their needs were as people were coming down to the hills to those locations, and get Starlinks out there, right, which were being donated. And we were putting up, just in one day, we did over 500 Starlinks.
Wow.
Which
That's
was
amazing.
then that continued, because we continued with Samaritan's Purse later in the operations, where they would put their engineers in our aircraft with our paramedic. And about 7, by the third time, it went from like 20 something aircraft, right, helicopters, to pushing 7 into Samaritan's Purse in Boone, North Carolina, and then pairing them up with the engineers from Starlink, right, to be able to actually finish setting up that rest of the grid to create one of the best communication systems in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Western North Carolina, which was just an amazing feat to see how that all kind of came together, So yeah, so communications controls chaos. People always say, well, it's not going to happen to me. Well, we live in a very unstable world. So, and if you're not going to pick up sat phone, that's fine. Have a communication plan. right? You can download Google Maps or maps.me, which is an offline thing on your phone. So at least you know how to navigate when your phone's not working. You can still offline, you can still navigate. The other part of it is to have a check-in place for your family. So if you know you're not communicating and you're all over town, everybody meets at the house, but you pull out that whiteboard and you have that that whiteboard is part of your check-in for the family. So you would know you'd all come to location. So and so, I was here at this time. I'm going out to get this from this location. I'm expected back at this time, right? So then you know that mission's complete. When that comes off, you exit and you move it. It's no different than us dropping these engineers in these mountains, right? So it started with organically people on the internet going, this person has a need from a 5x7 card, medical need, food need, water need, whatever the need was, right?
Yeah.
They verified it. They know the next of kin. Person's there. Yes, it's confirmed. The need's still there. It would slide over across. And if there's a medical need, they'd assign a paramedic. If it wasn't, it would go to the distribution area, which was at a hangar. The need would be filled. And they'd be like, do they need comms? Yes. Grab a Starlink, drop a Starlink into there, right? Do they need tools? Do they need fuel? Do they need a generator? Do they need blankets? What is the need? And so the need would get filled. That then aircraft would leave with that tail number and they would leave. New aircraft would come in. There was a check-in table. They'd have to give their tail number, their credentials, all that type of stuff, right? If a person came in, they're a paramedic, well, then they'd have to come in there. The credentials would have to be verified. And then they would get an assignment. So that's how it ran. And
amazing.
You have to run it the same way, right? You have to run it the same way as a house. And I always tell the pastors, and it's amazing on how, I have to say, I'm going to call them out, how complacent some of these pastors are across the country, right? Everything's good. God's going to handle everything and we're good. And I'm like, you're going to be the emergency operations center.
Yeah.
You're going to be the EOC. You are to lead your flock, right? And seeing how the pastors showed up in Katrina, right? Seeing how the pastors showed up all the way even to Maui, right? The churches that stayed open, right? The churches that stayed open during COVID that were there to minister and pastor and take the fear element out of it, right? And the church organizations of how they showed up in service for North Carolina, right? When your church is in that local area and your church is closed, what are the people in your organization think? Oh, well, wow, why are these people not, what are they not doing? Why is it a church that you guys not get your comms plan in order? Why did you not set up a sanitation area where people could come, do laundry, temporary power, drop fuel cells there because there's no fuel in town, all the power's out, where people can get fuel from the church, right? They have a daycare center area where the kids can be taken care of. You know what I mean? You operate that church as an emergency operations center to feed, house, warm, minister. That is the time that I would expect that every church should have an emergency operation plan. They should have a disaster response plan. Not, oh, we're just going to plan. No, have a be in a state of readiness.
Yeah.
To serve your community. Don't be reactionary when that stuff comes. Pull the plan out and say, hey, we did this, we drilled on it, and we're ready to serve our community.
Yeah, well, that's a great point for everybody, that all the contractors out there that are involved in their churches, to make sure that you help assist, get those plans in place, not just for your company, but in your family, but also for your local churches, which is awesome.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take it one step further. So we have 5 locations in the United States, right? That are what we call our cold locations. Okay. And these cold locations are self-sustaining. They have their own water systems, water purification systems. They have the food. They have the logistics. They're on 50 plus acres. They have animals that are able to be processed, housing there. We could basically live off the grid in these 5 locations, right? Those same locations also have an LZ for the rotor and a private airport to be able to fly in the smaller series, Honda series jets that we have a contract with. Those contracts we have is to move medical teams across the country in a disaster situation, right? So I'm not asking people to get at that level, but you may want to have an Amish brother, right? Or a redneck in the country. Yeah. If you're in the city, you may want to have those type of relationships, because if things go down, power goes out, every disaster zone, it's not functional, right? People don't understand. They think, okay, well, if there was chaos there, I'll be fine. I got enough food in my house. Well, you can have a gun, you can have food, a little bit of fuel. You're not going
Right.
to last very long. Those things in metropolitan areas, couple of days, and it's total chaos. I always say to people that are in disaster zones, don't come back. There's no grocery stores. Everything's shut down. There's no food. There's no power.
Yeah.
The amenities not there. The damage is already done. Stay out of the zone. Let the power get back online. Let things that are we're so used as a society to being able to do that.
Yeah.
But that takes me into what contractors need to do
Yep.
to prepare in storm areas to be effective on the response side of it, which is critical.
It is. Yeah. And so and you know what, Stephen, you've seen it all. It's kind of, even just listening to you, it's like, oh gosh, I feel my heart racing, but you've seen so much and we're so grateful for you sharing so people can be prepared to know what is the worst that they could actually possibly situation they could be in. And when it does come to preparing, as whether it's roofing or whether you're a wall and ceiling contractor, what do you see contractors stocking up on in regards to supplies to be able to take care of their customers? I mean, you got to get those roofs repaired so you can get the building dry. But what do you see? What should contractors be doing?
I think the mindset should be similar, right? If
Yeah.
there was a disruption in the supply chain, certain things can't get over to the States, things we don't manufacture here, raw materials we don't have, I would say do the same thing. Have a bigger stock of material that's sitting on your yard, not necessarily in the supply yard, right?
Yeah.
Because if you've noticed, everything that we've bought earlier, costs just keep going up, right? I mean,
Sure.
between both past administrations, over 8 trillion has been printed. I mean, just
Oh,
inflation's here, right? And then all the other nations that are pushing into the BRIC systems, there's a massive financial strain coming. And if you learn it in the last 4 years, they don't tell you the truth, right? So you think the economy's, not doing so well, inflation's high. Man, you're only being told what's on the very top, what's very obvious. What are you not being told? Do you know
right.
what I mean? So in that same vein, I strongly suggest that contractors become more of their own, stock their warehouses up, right? Get a little more material, right? Have a little bit more in your side of it, because it's like when you bought gold 2 years ago. You're like, oh my God, gold's through the roof, right? And all these things that I bought, materials 2 years ago, well, now that material's way more than what it was 2 years ago. So just get yourself a little bit more of a runway.
Okay.
Because if things, I feel, start to hit a block wall, you're the guy that has it. It's not much different than Hurricane Maria. We got called in to do 8 hospitals, right?
Yep.
And Hurricane Maria, the first thing that I did is, as the hurricane was headed that way, I found out who had what supplies on the ground. And I had one of my guys go secure all that supply.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we were able to get the contracts, and people like, man, you're ahead of it. I'm like, just, it's going to happen. You're going to have a need for it.
Right.
Waiting for it till the news tells you, oh, it got really jacked up. No, that Cat 5 is going to tear roofs off, right? You're waiting till you get the orders. No, order
No.
it now before it hits the thing. You're going to have a need for it.
That's so true, Steve. There was a contractor that gave a presentation at Best of Success, probably, years ago now, who did the roof at the what was this it was in Katrina. What was the
Stadium?
The stadium, yeah.
Astrodome? Yeah.
He bought all the material ahead of time to be able to do that roof. So it was kind of, they didn't have a choice but give him the contract because he pre-bought all the material. It was amazing. So Steve, I want to talk about training for a minute though, because you've shared this before, but I think it's definitely worth talking about it again. When it comes to communication, which of course is so important that we've been talking about, but how do you run your training with your team? I think you've told me before, like every quarter, everybody stops and you do this communications check and training with everything. How do you do that? And how can contractors implement the same thing?
Yeah. So for us, we have a written SOG, standard operating guideline on just every component of our company. And comms, it's a comms plan, right? So on that, every single phone has to have every number, sat phone has to have every number in both sat number, sat to sat, and sat to cell, right? Programmed into their satellite phone. And then I make it a point that every person makes that call and completes the call, but also takes it with the regular cell phone and scrolls so I can see that they actually added and imported all their stuff into their phones, right?
Right.
Because people are lazy. I mean, they just are, right? I don't have to do it. I got a lot of other stuff that's pressing. Why am I doing this? It's just because when those things happen, that's not the time to be responding to it, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the comms part of it is critical. We have all our Pelican cases that are all geared up. They have a deployment checklist. They have to videotape, take the photographs. Everything's got to be laid out. And every quarter they break that stuff down and put it back together. And people are like, why? It's already there. I said, because I want them to go through the mechanics mentally.
Yep.
It's top of mind. And with every deployment, we look at it on how do we collapse time? Like, how do we collapse time? How do we shorten that time? What did we learn from the last deployment? What are the needs? Where was some issues that arose, and how do we address it? Right? That allows us to be faster on the response time. You know, it's no different than being on a pit crew, right? You know, you lose that second or two with the wrong tool. There's no second place. There's only first place. Either you're winning that job or you're not getting the contract.
Yeah.
Right. So also one thing that I find also interesting is if you're going in that zone and the client's trying to get a hold of you, but the client can't get through to you, they're calling somebody else. Everybody knows what the statistics are on closing. The percentage is so high if you call them back within the first 5 minutes if you miss the call. But if you call them 2-3 hours later, that diminishes like down to the teens.
Wow.
So why do you want to miss that call, right? Man, when people call me in the work that I do, man, that phone rings, I grab it, answer it. Sometimes I don't even know who it is that I'm answering to, or it doesn't come up my caller ID. I just grab it, right? People are like, I don't know if it's spam. I don't give a shit. If it's spam, I just hang up 2 seconds, right? But if it's a call, grab the call. And I can't tell you how many times people go, you know what? I called you because you're always responsive.
Yeah,
and
that's
I say to them, well, if I don't answer the phone and I'm in the response business, I should find another trade.
Yeah, right.
I'm in the wrong business, right? Why am I waiting until ring 2? And it's amazing when I see people look at the phone, they're like, well, do I answer? Do I not answer? They're having all this conversation in their mind, right? They're waiting till it goes to the voicemail to see who's saying what.
Oh gosh, yeah, you can see that now, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in a meeting, I get it, right? I get it, right? But my goal is to be right on top of every possible deal that can come my way, and I don't know which isn't. You know, have your gear ready to go, run the drill, and then see how you can shorten that time, right? I personally, I look at the commercial airlines, what needs to get me from from point A to point B, right? And then I'm like, okay, well, I also have the private jet service. People are like, well, that's expensive. Well, how much is that job worth to you, right? And then especially on the medical response of it, I don't have that luxury, right?
Sure.
So our stuff, in when we're called in for that, they're like, wow, you guys are here, like, that was fast. I'm like, yeah, because I go from here to that private airport that's down the street from me. I don't have to go through customs check. That aircraft sitting there, and I'm wheels up minutes later, right? I grab our grab and go, our BLS bags, and we're across the country, wherever we need to be in the shortest amount of time possible, staging our people, staging our equipment. Yeah, it costs a premium, but a client wants that premium, right? If they want something cheap, well, listen, it's no different. I always explain to people, like, you're having a heart attack, right? You get these chest pains, you're not sure, right, what the situation is. You can call a rescue, right? Medical rescue. It's going to cost you money. It'll get you to the hospital. Or you can call an Uber. Are you the guy that's going to call the Uber? He'll get you to the hospital too. I'm sure they'll both get you to the hospital.
Right.
Well, which way do you want to go?
Absolutely. Let's get there quickly for sure, if that's the case. Well, Steve, circling back to what's coming up, you know, these bomb cyclones, and whether it's hurricanes or a bomb cyclone or whatever it might be, you know, definitely everyone needs to be prepared. And thank you for sharing everything that they need to have ready to roll. But any final thoughts of what contractors listening should know?
Yeah, I mean, listen, pre-stage, right? You're going to pre-stage equipment, you're going to pre-stage material. If there's a system, you're going to go work, be ahead of everybody else, right? This is a race, right? Pre-stage, get an advanced team in there. You know the system's coming. Where can you stage just outside of it? How can you notify your clients to let them know that you're there? And here's your means of communication, right? How ready is your team? Are they clean? Are they polished? Are they ready to go? Are they expected that if they're going to get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, is your after hours dispatch ready to go for these guys to be able to get the phones? Are their phones next to their bed, or are they on a do not disturb, right? What does that look like? Right? And then what you do, you know what you do? You really got to drill it. And people don't understand. They're like, oh yeah, we got this critical response team. We're going to go ahead and do this stuff. Yeah. Try making those phone calls. See how they respond. Record the phone calls. Have a mock person on the phone that they don't know is an actual, you're testing the system. Are they shuffling around with papers? Are they, they're like this? Are they distracted? Are they fully engaged, present, right there at the client's attention? And what is the message that they're getting? Is this a concierge company? How are they being handled? All that type of stuff. And I learned it many years ago because you know how leads are, right? This one company goes, oh yeah, I sent all these leads out to these contractors and they're recorded, but they weren't able to close the leads. I said, you know what? I'll buy them for pennies on the dollar. Send me all your recorded leads. They sent me all the leads and I'm listening to the recorded call. I'm like, of course they didn't sell any of this shit. Because I would have been like, man, I would have fired all those salesmen. I would have fired every person and even the owners, right? Wow. They didn't have their shit together that when they're, oh, can you text me your information? Oh, hey, can hold on a second. Let me find a pen. Hold on. You know, they're trying to shovel their breakfast, coffee, things are, and there's all this noise in the background. And my OCD, ADHD, whatever, all my sensory shit's blowing up in my mind, right? I'm like, oh my God, I would just lose my shit on this phone call, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm like, I just need to be present. So when I'm talking to a client, when I train every one of my members is, man, you better step into a place that's quiet. You better be completely laser focused on that conversation, attentive to the client. And if you didn't hear them quite clearly, repeat it and have them repeat it back to you. And then, because their only experience is going to be with you on that phone. And do that throughout the whole job, and you're going to have a successful experience, and you're going to get a great rating. You know, people go, you guys have hundreds of 5-star reviews. I said, yeah. I said, because I pick and choose my clients just as much as they're picking and choosing me. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it. Just be your word. I think the biggest thing to leave the contractors over, just be your word. If you tell someone you're going to be there at 9 o'clock, be there at 9 o'clock. If you say you're going to deliver something at a certain time, deliver it at a certain time, be your word. If things change, call ahead of time, change the schedule, know that they can count on you, and always tell the client what to expect when they're expecting a roofing or a wall and ceiling job or reconstruction, what's going to go through. The more communication, the clear and concise you are, the less they'll be pointing fingers afterwards. That's it.
Oh, that's great. That's great insight, Steve. You know, there's just nothing more important than being prepared for a crisis. And when you're in a crisis, you got to be in crisis mode, as you were saying. So thanks for the incredible insight, Steve. If anybody has any questions for you, how do they find you? What's your website?
Well, the website is srp24.com. If there's anything that they're interested as far as a plan, a deployment checklist, that type of stuff, they can email me at response, RESPONSE, at srp24.com.
Sounds great. And if anybody has any questions for us, it's either roofingcontractor.com or wconline.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for all our free content, especially make sure you sign up for our e-newsletters. Follow us on all our social media channels so you can stay up to date in all the great interviews we're putting together, especially like the one today with Steve. But most importantly, stay safe and healthy, and we can't wait to talk to you soon. It's an honor, Steve. Thanks again so much.
Well, thank you for having me, Jill. Have a blessed day.